Hello and welcome to Size Me. You're watching the video tutorial that goes along with the Size Me Florence trousers, which are one of my favourite things to wear. We're going to go through all of the details step by step so that hopefully your garment looks amazing at the end of it. I can't wait to see them, to be honest. So I'm presuming at this point that you have cut out all of your fabric pieces and you've transferred all of your construction marks. Now, if you struggle with that, if it's new to you, pop back to the YouTube channel and you should find some really helpful tutorials that will take you through that step by step. But for this purpose, I've just assumed that we're all sorted and we're good to sew. So I do need to make a few points about these trousers. There are a couple of tricky details in there. We're going to do an invisible zip guy, a concealed zip, which is a bit scary, but I promise I'll walk you through it. But these trousers really hinge upon them fitting perfectly at the waist. So I'm going to constantly be going on about accurate, be accurate, check this measurement, check that measurement. Please do that. If you do, you're in danger of the trousers being too tight or too big. And then you'll never be happy with the fit, and we want you to be happy with your end product. So really take your time. We're going to take it nice and steady. You can pause me, you can mute me if you don't want to listen to me, but hopefully we'll get you to the end. I'll sprinkle all of this with some lovely hints and tips as we go along, so hopefully even if you're not making the Florence trousers, you may learn something as you go through this video tutorial. Alright guys, now our first step is step 2 of our instructions, which I do hope you have with you to listen to me, watch and have your instructions. Really gives you the full package, guys. So I do want to see that you have them there with you. We're going to start on step 2, which is to stay stitch all of your fabric, not all of your fabric, what am I talking about? Stay stitch the waistlines of the front and back of your trousers. Now a stay stitch is a stitch that does exactly what it says on the tin. So it's intended to make the fabric stay in place. So it's very important if you have a loose weave fabric that's going to open up when you cut. Even those little notches that you cut in where your construction marks are, they can open up. Now if they open up 0.5 centimetre, which is not a great deal, you actually have 2 of them on the front, so that's 1 centimetre, same on the other side. So you can see how these inaccuracies creep in, and they do come out and bite you if you don't keep control of them. So we're going to make the fabric stay in the correct location. So we're just simply going to stitch nothing together, a single layer of fabric, and we're going to stitch along the top waist of each of those fabric pieces, front and back. So there's 4 of them. We're going to use a seam allowance of 1 centimetre, not our normal 1.5. We use the 1 centimetre seam allowance because this is a temporary stitch and we don't want to see it in the finished garment, so it's inside the seam allowance so that when you've attached your waistband you won't see this at all. So I'll give you a moment to get yourself sorted, and me, and I'll meet you at the sewing machine. There was one thing that I forgot to mention. As you can see, my fabric looks exactly the same on the front and the back. So to ensure that I don't stitch 2 of the same legs, if I don't get the wrong way around, I've used some soap. So this is soap that you get free in hotels, etc. But if you look, you can just mark your fabric. You know it's going to disappear, so you can do big crosses if you like. Now, I always mark the correct side of my fabric. You can mark whichever side makes sense to you, but be consistent. Then every time you start with your stitching, you can check that you're using the correct side. Alright guys, a little tip there for you. So this piece is the front leg, and this is the top of the leg, so it's the waist of the leg. I've set my machine up to a normal standard straight stitch. It's set at 2.5 centimetre, 2.5 is the stitch length. My seam allowance is at 1 centimetre like we've talked about. And we're simply going to stitch across. So we're going to do our back stitch as normal. And then we're going to stitch all the way across. Now, if your fabric is quite a loose weave, this isn't, so we should be okay. But if it is, I want you to almost put a little bit of extra fabric in front of this foot. It just ensures that your fabric isn't being stretched whilst you stitch it. Because if you stretch it whilst you stitch it, you've actually stitched in the stretch of the fabric as opposed to anything else. So you've already lost that accuracy that we've been talking about. I'm going to stitch to the end and do a back stitch. And then I'm going to leave you guys to do all 4 pieces. So that's 2 fronts and 2 backs. And then I will meet you at the ironing board with your 2 front pieces and your pocket pieces, please. Back stitch at the end. Right guys, I'll see you in a moment. So stay stitching finished, and we're going to work on putting the crease in where the pleat is. Now this is another thing that we want to be accurate on, guys. It's a bit awkward with the camera to show you, so I hopefully I get it right for you. So the first thing to notice is I have the front piece. So this is your front leg, so you should, that's the angle here where the pocket is going to be attached, and this here is the crotch. So we're going to take, by the way, this is the right side facing the ceiling, so we can see the right side of the fabric here. We're going to take the notch, the little slit that you made at the mark for the pleat line, and we're going to pull it across so that it matches. I will bring the camera closer, but I want it to match the notch that's closer to the crotch. So let me, once you've done that, you're just going to pop a pin there. I won't pin it yet because I'm going to bring you a little bit closer so you can see exactly what I've done. So here's how I've folded it. So let me explain. I'm going to open it back up again. You should be able to see a notch here. So that's the notch that's closest to the pocket. We're going to pick that notch up. I'm going to bring it all the way across so it meets the notch here that's closest to the crotch. And we're going to fold it over. We're going to make sure everything matches across the top. Can you see that? Everything matches beautifully. And then we're going to check this dimension. So it's from the pleat edge to the centre here where the crotch is. And that has to be 5.5 centimetres. And I want it to be 5.5 centimetres for every size. Doesn't matter which size it is. And then we're going to pop a pin in it. Try not to pin it to your ironing board, folks. And we're just going to put a little press there. We're not going to press the pleat all the way down yet because we're going to do some work at the other end of the leg, but we've fixed this. So just to recap, we've brought the notch, the construction mark that's closest to this diagonal on the pocket, picked it up, brought it all the way across to the notch that should 5.5 centimetres. Checked that, 5.5 centimetres. So the actual pleat is here at the back. This is the pleat, and then the pocket is just over the top of it. Okay, I'm going to take to the other side of the trousers now so that you can see how we do a very similar thing on the other side. Right guys, so we're now at the bottom end of the trouser. It's the same way around, so this is the pocket side and this is the crotch side. So you should have 2 little construction marks on the bottom. We're going to take this side, we're going to pick it up, and we're going to bring it all the way across to the other notch, and then we're going to make all those edges here match beautifully. Now we don't have to worry too much about the absolute accuracy at the bottom, but be as accurate as you can. It's the top that's important. The bottom of the legs will just open up as you're wearing them. So we'll pop some pins there, and then I'm just pressing the top bit. I'm not worrying about this middle bit yet, just the top bit. And then our next step is take a hold of each of those locations. So this is the top pleat, this is the bottom, and I'm just going to pull it out. And can you see how suddenly we've got that straight line between the two? Once you've got that lovely straight line, you can then press it in place. If you feel that you want to put some pins down this, that's absolutely fine, but you don't have to. It's not necessary. So that is your pleat pressed in place all the way down. The next step on your instructions, just pop that there. The next step on your instructions is to fold your pocket piece in half and press. So let me get the one that I haven't already done. So this is our pocket piece, and what it says is we're going to fold it in half with the right side of the fabric together. So you should have a notch on either side and a notch top and bottom. So the top and bottom is where you're going to fold it, and then you're going to match the two side notches and press. So let's do that in real life. So hopefully you can see my cross there, so I know that that's the correct side of my fabric. And I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to check my notch here is absolutely in the middle, and also the slit at the top, the construction mark, notch, slit, or however you want to describe it at the top is matching. And then I'm just going to check that these side ones are matching. And once I'm happy, I'm going to press down that edge. Again, this is another important one because this part of the pocket is, can you see on mine, this bit here, from here to here. So if you fold it incorrectly, again, you're adding or taking away from that waist dimension, and it is important that you do get it in the right place, guys. So that's all pressed, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so we're all beautifully pressed, and what I just wanted to show you was the next step, which was how to attach the pocket to the trouser leg. Now, just so that you can get your bearings, this here is the crotch of the trouser. This is the pleat that you folded over. This here is the diagonal for the pocket. What I have here is the folded pocket. So the fold is at this end, and then on the top is the diagonal for the pocket here. What I want you to check is that they're at the same angle. So if your pocket is going this way on your trousers, I want you to be able to see it on the pocket, and I want you to be able to see it's going in the correct direction. When you've checked those two things, I want you to pick up the diagonal on the pocket like that, pick it all the way up, and then lay it down onto the diagonal of the trouser, and then simply pin. I'm just going to do that one more time for you. So we start off, it's folded in half. I'm going to pick up this diagonal, and I'm going to move that bit out of the way, and then I'm going to lay it onto there. So what you should have is the right sides of those two pieces of fabric facing each other. And then I want you to pin it, guys, and make sure you match everything, match the ends, and pin it in place. Once we've done that, we'll go to the sewing machine and we'll use a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, and we'll stitch that pocket in place. Okay, so I'll show you where we're at. So I put quite a few pins in there. Don't ever be shy with your pins, guys. So we've all pinned. See you at the sewing machine. Okay, so we're using just a normal straight stitch. Mine's set at 2.5, which is my sort of default. Anywhere between 2.5 and 3 is absolutely fine, guys. And then I'm being extra careful that I line up the edge of the fabric here with my 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. Now, just before we start, I want to just bring your attention to the fact that this line on the pattern is cut on the bias. That is, it's diagonal to the grain. What that means is that the bias can stretch, and we don't want to stretch this because we'll end up with a baggy pocket on our trousers, which won't look very, very nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to be careful not to stretch when we're stitching. The best way to do that is to almost push a little bit of extra fabric in front of the foot here so that the machine pulls it through. It's not got any resistance on this side that might stretch it. So we're going to take this nice and gently. We're going to do a back stitch first, as always, and then we're off. So we're just gently keeping a little bit in front of that foot. We're not doing anything that could stretch that fabric out of shape. Now I'm going to show you how to do one pocket in its entirety. Unlike the instructions, it gets you doing it at the same time. I'm going to show you one in its entirety, and then you can jump back and do exactly the same from the start to finish with the other pocket. Okay, so the next step will be at the ironing board, and I'll see you there. Okay guys, so this is the seam that we've just stitched. I've opened up, so this is the pocket, this is the trousers. I'm going to be careful not to interfere with these lovely creases that we've got in our trousers and our pocket. And we're going to press our seam allowance all the way across to the pocket, okay? So I'm pulling the pocket a little bit to make sure it's a sharp crease, but we're going to push it all the way across and give it a good old press. Then we're just going to pop a couple of pins. We don't need lots of pins for this, but we're just going to pop a couple of pins in here before we do our top stitching. So it's all pressed towards the pocket, we've pinned it, and I'll see you back at the sewing machine. Okay, so you can see I'm very close to this original stitch line, but I am on this side, so the side with the seam, I'm on the pocket side of it. And what we're going to do is stitch a row of stitching very close to this. Now when I say very close, if you have the skill, I want you to be just a couple of millimetres away. If you don't have the skill and you're worried that you're gonna wobble onto this side, then don't go so close. It's okay. Give yourself a break and just come a little bit further in this direction. Okay, so it's a normal stitch, just like we've used all the way through, and we're just going to stitch down that side. Okay, so we're coming to the end. We're going to do a back stitch, and then I can take it off the machine for you, and you can see just how close I did it. Okay, just a couple of millimetres away. If you're not so close, that's not the end of the world, but make sure you are on this side, so the side where the seam has been pressed, the pocket side, and not on your trouser front. Okay guys, so trip back to the ironing board and I'll see you there. So this is your crotch line, and you've got your lovely pleat that we pressed earlier. This is the pocket line. I can see the top stitching here, sorry, the under stitching here that you did, and then this is the pocket over here. So we're going to take the pocket and we're going to fold it underneath, so we can see that lovely crisp pocket edge here, and we're just going to press it. I'm going to match, there is two notches here, one on the trouser and one on the pocket, so I'm going to match those up, and then I know that everything is in the right location, and then I'm simply going to press. Now a little tip, it's a little bit disgusting, but a tip to get this to the right location is to just lick them, just wet your fingers, and then you can roll the fabric until it's in the exact location that you want it to be. Notice I'm using the steam. Steam is always your friend, guys. I'm just going to put some pins and then I'll hold it up for the camera. Some sharper pins would have been nice. Does anybody else every once in a while just decide to throw some pins away? I mean, they do go blunt. We expect them to last forever, but they do go blunt. Okay, so that is our lovely crisp line for our pocket edge. At the back, we still have our pocket. Okay, so it's just this edge. You can see on this side, that's your understitching. And then on this side, which is the front, there's nothing at the moment. But we're going to go back to the machine and we're going to do a top stitch on there. Top stitching is visible on your project when you've finished, so it needs to look really lovely. It's worth spending some time doing. But one of the things that makes it look lovely is that you increase your stitch length. So my stitch length is normally a default of 2.5. I'm going to take it up to 3.5. Whatever your normal stitch setting is, just add one whole number and that will be fine for your top stitching. So top stitching should be close to this edge. Again, sometimes that's difficult to do, and a top stitch that's close to this edge but wobbly, you're really drawn to it. But a top stitch that's lovely and straight that might be a little bit further in this direction will always look better on your project. But a little tip is you can move your needle. So at the minute the needle is set in the centre. You should have a setting on your machine that sets the width for the zigzag stitch. If you take your needle all the way across to the, let's get this right, it's our right hand side, isn't it? So closest to this edge, take it all the way over. Can you then see that your needle is much closer to this edge? And what that means is you can use the edge of the foot and the fabric as your guide to keep it lovely and straight. If you don't have that ability to move your needle, don't worry, just take your time and nice and steady. So I'm going to use the edge because I can, and we're just going to nice and gently with a back stitch as always. Sorry, get that thread out of our way. Nice and steady. Again, I'm trying not to stretch the fabric, so although I'm not pushing it into the machine, I'm not giving any resistance in this direction. Some people don't do this top stitching. They prefer the look of the trousers without it, so it is your choice. Personally, I think it gives a nice tailored look to them. And a back stitch there at the end. Okay, so you should have a lovely row of top stitching down the edge of your pocket. Now we've got one last thing to do, and that's just to go across the back, bottom of the pocket detail. I'm going to take you back to a space where you can see what I'm doing though before we do that. So I'll see you in a moment. So that's the back stitching that you've just done on the front of the pocket. So we've got the pleat here and then your stitching. At the back, we still have this pocket with the crease down the middle. I want you to fold that crease back over, like so. And this is now away from the trouser. It's just the bottom edge of that pocket, and we're going to stitch across. I'm going to pin it first, and then we're just going to stitch across. Now, it's a good point in the project to talk about seam finishes, and I'll explain how I'm going to do the seam finishes and what your options are. Now, seam finishes, it is actually a choice. Some people don't finish the seams and they suffer the consequence. Some people use the sort of hierarchy, which is in your instruction details. So you can either use pinking shears, which are a pair of scissors that cut little zigzags across. You can zigzag the edges with your machine. You can use an overcasting stitch and foot. You do need a foot for that. or you can use an overlocker. Now, for the purpose of these tutorials, I'm not going to go into seam finishes, but needless to say, probably when you see me next, see the project next, some of the seams will be finished. So the first one that we're going to finish is this pocket, and I'm going to use an overlocker. So you do whatever you want to do as a seam finish, but once you've stitched this pocket, now is the opportunity to finish this edge. I will tell you when I'm going to do my seam finishes, but the choice of seam finish is up to you. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. Right. I'm going to stitch across this using our normal 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, and then I'll join you back at the ironing board or a table, and I'm going to show you the last step that completes your pocket detail. So the next step is to pin the pocket in place so that we can just tack it, baste it in place so that it doesn't lose its location. So this is the pocket and this is the front. So we've got the crotch here, our lovely pleat that we did here, and then this is the edge of the pocket with our top stitching. So we're going to just bring the pleat over so that we can pop our pocket bag, as it's called, to the back. And then at the bottom here, we should have 3 notches that line up. So we have got the 2 notches on the pocket and there is 1 notch on the trouser front. So once we've got them all to match, we're going to pop a pin. It is important that we make sure that this is then really nice and flat against. So we don't want it to be sort of all of this because you'll see it. So we're going to pin it nice and flat, all the edges matching. Then we're going to work on the top bit. So we're just going to fold our pocket under like so. It's a little bit tricky because the pleat can get in your way. The pocket kind of sits in the middle of the pleat, so it can be a tricky detail. So we go up to the top and we're just going to re-pin everything in place. So there's the pocket fold, there is the actual pleat that you did earlier, and I'm going to show you when I've pinned them all so that you can see what I'm up to. So can you see how it all now lies nice and flat? So the pocket is in here. We've got everything pinned along the side and all the notches matching. And then up here at the top, there, we've got the pleat at the back, the pockets folded, and everything is behaving itself. At this point, we're going to pin the flap of the pleat in place too. So we're just going to make sure it matches the top edges. And then remember that measurement that I said I'm going to keep constantly getting you to check? Because we've messed about with this pleat a little bit to get that pocket in place, I want you to go back and I want you to check the dimension from the pleat to the edge of the fabric at the crotch. Now it should still be 5.5 centimetres. See?
5.5 centimetres.
Move you over a bit. And it really is worth checking, guys. You wouldn't have thought this bit would be so fiddly, but it is. So let's check. 5 centimetres. So I'm all happy. And all we're going to do is we're just going to pin those bits in place. So we're going to do, bring this up, we're going to do a row of stitching across the top to keep all our pleats and pockets in place. We're going to do it at 6mm, so we're going to run the edge of the foot on the edge of the fabric so that they were stitching close to the edge. And then we're going to do the same on that edge of the pocket here where the pins are, so that that whole piece of fabric for the trouser, I'll bring you around, behaves as one piece of fabric. Okay, I'll see you at the sewing machine. So this is the top edge, so we've got the pocket and the pleat and everything to stitch in place. We're going to just simply stitch across here. I've got the edge of the foot on the edge of the fabric, and we're just going to stitch. We're going to do a back stitch because we want to keep it in place. Be careful when you get to these details because sometimes the foot can move them out of the way and create a pleat. So if you feel that that's happening, just get close, lift your foot up, push everything underneath and your foot back down. And you'll be able to do that without any problems. Taking that pin out at the last point because that was the pin holding that pleat in the correct location. That's the measurement that we keep checking. So that's the top done. And then we're going to do exactly the same at the edge of the pocket. So again, we'll be using the edge of the fabric as our guide, so that this is a basting stitch, so it's temporary and you won't see it on the finished garment. Okay. So that is your pocket completely finished, guys. In place, the front of your trouser leg is complete. I'd like you to repeat that on the other side, and then I'll join you at the ironing board, and I'd like you to have both of those front trousers ready. Okay? We now have two completed fronts of your trousers. I'm just going to make sure, because I think I said 5 rather than 5.5 centimetres. That dimension from here to your pleat should be 5.5 centimetres. Okay, I'm probably going to have to put loads of woo woo all over this YouTube video so that you don't get that mixed up. I can't believe that's the one thing I kept saying wrong, but hey ho, we will fix it. So you should have both of your trousers. I have laid them down with the correct size, the right side of the fabric facing each other, and I'm matching this crotch seam here. Okay, so we're going to pin it and then we're going to stitch it. Now, this seam is different for 2 reasons. This seam needs to be incredibly strong and robust because as you're moving around, standing up, sitting down in your trousers, this takes all of the hammer. So, first things first is we're going to use a triple stitch on your machine if you have one, of course. So a triple stitch does exactly what it says. It stitches in the same location. It stitches 3 times. I like to call it the drunken stitch because it kind of goes 2 steps forward, 2 steps back when you're sewing. So it's a strange movement. I'll show you on the machine what that stitch looks like. If you don't have that option, don't despair. What you can do is stitch 2 rows of stitching. So that's the first thing to think about, is the type of stitch that you're using. The other thing is this seam allowance is different. It is not a 1.5, it's a 1 centimetre seam allowance on this seam and the back crotch seam. So I will remind you when we get back to the sewing machine. I'll leave you to pin that crotch so everything matches beautifully, and then we'll get sewing. Okay guys, so on my machine this is the triple stitch. So I can just simply press and it will be doing the triple stitch for me. If you don't have that option on your machine, you're going to stitch a normal straight stitch and then you're going to stitch again inside the seam allowance at a 0.5 centimetre seam allowance, okay? But as soon as we have the option for the triple stitch, that's what we're going to use. Move you across here. So you can see I'm using the 10mm or the 1 centimetre seam allowance. I just want to show you that we're actually stitching a curve. So I'm going to stitch the curve. I'm not going to do that. As soon as I bring it forward, look at all this. How can I possibly stitch that? Okay, so it's your job to feed it in nice and gently along that curve. Okay, can you see how this is a drunken stitch, guys? 2 steps forward, 1 stitch back. Does mean that it's quite a slow and steady stitch. So it does give you a chance to feed that curve in. We're going to go all the way up to the top of this seam. The zip is in the back for these trousers. If you are finishing your seams, a point to note is to finish these seams open. So if you're overlocking, it's very tempting to overlock them together because it's a smaller seam, but don't. It will cause you problems later on. That also goes for the back seam. Anything where we have to insert a zip, you don't want to be stitching any of these seams, or rather finishing any of these seams together. So I'm going to finish this right up to the top, guys, and then I'm going to do my seam finishes. We can pop this to one side then, and we're going to work on our backs. So when you've done this step, I will meet you back at the ironing board, and I'd like you to have your backs, trouser backs, ready and waiting. See you then. Right then, so this is our back. I've got it with the right sides facing up, and on the other side you can see where I've transferred that dart mark on there. Okay, so that's facing the ironing board at the moment. I'm just going to turn it around so that I can do it more easily. I just wanted to show you the orientation. So this is the waistband and our dart is here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to lift it until I can see the dart line. And then I'm just going to check that it matches the dart line at the back. And then I'm going to put a pin on the actual line. Now the way I know if it's matching, I've put the pin on the line at the front, and then I can go to the back and see if it's on the line at the back. Now I'm not right, I'm a couple of mil out, so let's try that again. Let's go backwards. If we don't get these perfect, again, we're changing the dimension of the waist measurement, and that's when they won't fit right. They'll either be too big or too small. So I've got that just perfect now. I've then found the tip of the green triangle and I've put that right on the edge of the fold. So I've just smoothed everything out, and I'm going to put a pin there because it's easy to lose that end. Okay, so I've put a pin just showing where the end of this triangle is, and then I'm just going to press. It really is as simple as that. And then I'm going to put a couple more pins in on that line, and I'm just checking that they're in the right location at the back. Okay, you have 2 of these to do, guys. If you prepare your darts in this way, and then I will see you at the sewing machine to stitch them. Here we are then with the dart. So you've pressed it perfectly and you've put your pins in. You're going to put your stitch length back to a standard straight stitch if you had it on that triple stitch for the crotch on the front. So we're all back to normal. And the theory is we're just going to stitch down that green line, or whatever the colour line that you have marked your dart with. When we get approximately an inch or 2.5 centimetres from that end, we will change our instructions. So to begin with, we're just going to stitch as normal with a back stitch down that line. Now we're not paying any attention to anything over here. We're not looking at seam allowance. What we're looking at is that this line that we've got heads directly for the needle. So we're stitching down that line. We're not going to change direction. If you suddenly realise that you're not on the line and you change direction, you get a really awkward shaped dart. So it's better to start again if that's the case than try and fix it. So we're about 2.5 centimetres away from the edge there, and I'm going to reduce my stitch length by a whole number. And I'm going to continue down this line until I'm about 1 centimetre from the end. And then I'm going to turn it down to 1. So whatever it was at before, just turn it all the way down to 1. And we're just going to stitch off of the edge of the dart. So we're not going to change direction, we're just going to let the machine feed it through until it stitches all the way off the dart. What that does is it gives you a lovely smooth finish at the end of your dart, so you don't have any weird ruffles at this point. Okay, I'll meet you back at the sewing machine after you've done the other one, and we'll have a look at the best way to press them. Now, you did expect me to be at the ironing board, didn't you? I'm really sorry. I think the gremlins have got me today, so it didn't record. So I was rambling on, telling you all what to do, and it didn't record, so let me explain it here. So I've already gone a step forward, so thankfully it's not a complicated step, so you'll be fine. So for your darts, you're going to press it in one direction and then press it in the other direction. I want them to end up so that the dart actually faces the centre seam here, the one that you're going to input the zip. Then I want you to turn it round to the right side and give it a good press. And you'll be amazed what that does. Look how lovely that dart finishes. If you need to spend a bit of time on that point, do so. Just use some circular motions and some steam and it should look beautiful. Okay, so that's how you press the darts, guys. There is actually, if you do struggle with that bit, if you go and have a look at the skirt tutorial, there is darts in that, so you'll be able to see it. Sorry about that. The other thing that I did do and happily talked you all through it was I pinned the crotch. So I pinned it from the notch here all the way down to there, and then I've stitched it. So I've stitched it at a 1 centimetre seam allowance, just like we did the front, and I've also used a triple stitch, okay, for the security, for the strength, just like we did the front. If you don't have the triple stitch, you can just double stitch it like you did the front crotch. So there we are. And then I sneakily finished the seams. I didn't record that bit on a purpose, but yeah, strange times. So hopefully this is recorded. Fingers crossed. So we're going to look at putting the zip in now, guys, which I know scares some people, but we're going to do it one step at a time, so we're not going to worry over it. So I'm just going to bring the camera down so that you can see what I'm actually doing in front of me. But you should have an invisible zipper that looks like that, okay? I want you to open that zip up, and I want you to take the right side of it, so the side that the zipper is on, and I want you to pin it to the right side of your trousers. Okay, so I'm going to put a couple of pins in so you can see what I'm actually doing. I've also chosen a zip that isn't too close to the colour of the trousers, so that you can see what I'm doing. So this is the correct side of the trousers because there's no seam. Yeah, and that underneath is the correct side of the zip, and it's facing each other. I've matched the top of the zipper tape with the raw edge at the waist, and I've matched the side of the zipper tape with the finished edge of my trousers. And I'm just going to keep pinning that all the way down. Step number 1. It's easy so far, isn't it? Nothing to see here. I do understand and appreciate why these are quite scary things to do, so we will take it nice and steady, guys. No need to rush. There is just a tricky pin at the bottom where the seam starts. That's what I'm just messing about with. So that's our first bit pinned. We're then going to zip the zip up, and this is the perfect chance to make sure that you've actually pinned the right side of the zip to the right side of the fabric. So you shouldn't be able to see the actual pull for the zip. And then we're going to take the right side of the other side and we're going to attach it to the top there in exactly the same way. So right sides together, matching the top of the tape with the top of the fabric and the edges together too. So I'm just going to turn it to face me because we're just going to continue that matching of the tape with the edges of the fabric, and we're just going to pin it all the way down. So hopefully so far so good. always the tricky bit at the bottom. So this is what it should look like from the back. So we've matched at the top, we're matching all the way down. And notice there's lots of tape extra here. That's fine, that's supposed to be there, so don't worry. So we've pinned it all the way down. I'll just show you what it looks like on the other side so that you can see what you're supposed to be looking at. So on this side, this is the right side of your trousers, you should be able to see the pull there. And then we're going to go right down to that bit here. So the first step is going to involve, oh sorry, the pin got me, is going to involve a zipper foot, just a normal zipper foot that looks like this. So it's not the invisible zip foot like this one. They do look different actually, guys, so keep your eye out for that, but these are generally the same. So it's one with a big toe, that's what we're going to use first. So I'll pull you around to the machine and I'll start the process of putting your zip in. The first thing to notice is that I've opened up the zip and I've pulled the zipper right to the end of the tape so it's out of the way of us stitching. The second thing to notice is we're just stitching through the zip and one layer of fabric. So this isn't folded back like that. We're actually just got one layer of fabric. And we're just going to use the zipper foot, not the invisible zipper foot, the regular zipper foot. And basically this one is just so that we can get rid of the pins, everything's secured before we do the invisible foot, use the invisible foot, sorry. Pop that pin back in. Okay, so when you're ready, we're just going to nice and steady stitch down here. So the edge of this metal foot is just going to run along the edge of those teeth. Keep manoeuvring the fabric so that it's in the right place for what we're doing. And I want to show you where the opening is here. Now we're just going to go 1 centimetre past that opening. So notice I'm opening up the seam allowance here so that the zip just lies on top. And I'm just going to check where the opening is. So the opening's there. I'm going to put a pin, so that is, that there is 1 centimetre past the opening, okay? So now we've got that marked, we can carry on. Sorry, I've got an overlocker foot under the table as well. I wondered why it wasn't moving. And we're going to very gently take this pin out. And we're going to stop precisely at that pin and then do a back stitch. Okay, so I'm hoping you can see in there that we're beyond the gap, but only by 1 centimetre. We're now going to repeat that down the other side. So again, just going to flip the foot onto the correct side. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're just going to nice and steady stitch down this side. This over here can cause a problem, so make sure you put it where you want it to be. Remember, you're in charge here. Because it can fight against you, and you're in charge of bringing it in line. So I can see where I stopped on this side, so I'm not going to pop a pin in, but if you want to, if you feel the need to, do that. But we're not going to be going beyond the line before it. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, that's the first step done. I'm going to pull the camera around so that you can see what it looks like, and then we'll go on to the next step. Hopefully that was okay, guys. So what you should have is stitches close to the zip, but not underneath the zip, but close to it, stopping at 1 centimetre below the gap that you stitched there. So your actual zipper is all the way down here out of the way. And what it should look like on the other side is that. So you can see how it starts to look like your invisible zipper, but we can still see quite a bit of the tape because we're not very close to those teeth. So I'm just going to take it to the ironing board. We're going to gently roll those teeth. I'm going to see if I can show you on the camera exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to roll those teeth back. Can you see? So they were like that. We're going to roll them back. We're going to very gently press them like that. It's just to help us when we put it under the machine. We're not going to have too hot an iron because it can melt these teeth. But when we actually stitch, we're going to be stitching all the way underneath there. So when the teeth roll back, it actually covers up our sewing. So it is incredibly close. The foot will help us, so don't panic. But first of all, we're just going to lightly press them. So here's my zip. I'm just going to roll it. And I'm just going to very gently press down. Okay, if you hold it too long, guys, you're going to melt the zip. So it's just a gentle press. That's the first side. And then we'll do the second side. Now, not everybody does this. It isn't absolutely required, but I find that it does help. Now that's pressed, we're going to go back to the machine and we're going to use the invisible zip foot and finish the job. Hopefully you can see that this zip is going into this notch, the one on the left hand side, and if you can see, if you put the needle down, it should just miss it. So that's the theory for an invisible zip tape. So we're going to pull, going to do our back stitch first, sorry. And we're going to go incredibly slowly and watch. We're going to pull our zip tape out of the way, just like we did when we were pressing. Can you see? And then we're going to stitch. So we're going to go nice and gently. There is absolutely no point in rushing this, guys, because it will come back and haunt you. Any little stitch that goes onto those zipper teeth just means the zip won't go up and down. Okay, we're going to go all the way down and we're going to stop in the same location that we stopped when we did the first row of stitching. Gets a little trickier as you get closer to the end, but hopefully it will help you realise why we've got such a long zip compared to the gap that we're fixing. So you see the brown stitching? I'm only going to that location, I'm not going any further. Now sometimes the back stitch gets tricky, so just be careful that you don't catch your zip. So that's our first row. So if I show you, if I get rid of that, you can't actually see the second row of stitching unless you roll back the teeth. And what that means on this side is that the fabric is stitched basically next to the teeth of the zip. Okay? So when it's all pressed, it's going to be beautiful. We're going to do that to the other side, and then I will join you at the ironing board, guys. So that's what your zip should look like at the minute, and the tricksy bit is to pick this up and take the pulley through the hole and pull it all the way up. I'll probably make that look easy. Sometimes you might need some snips to help you, tweezers to help you pull that up. But hopefully you can see on this side we have a beautiful invisible zip. Ta-da! Now I'm just going to press it to make it beautiful, but I just want to take this minute to say to you guys, an invisible zip is something that even the most seasoned sewers seem to avoid. So to get to where you are, even if you've unpicked it 6 times, you're doing an amazing job. So do not be disheartened if you have to unpick. It's a really, really tricky detail. If you give up on it, and I really hope you don't give up on it, but if you do give up on it, then you can put a regular zip in. It isn't the end of the world. But these trousers, they just call out for that smart detail, I think. So there we go with our beautifully inserted zip. And I just want to take this minute just to say, do you know what? All of these things are techniques, and you can't do a technique the first time you do it. You shouldn't be able to do everything first time. Some things take practice, but don't give up. Keep going, and you will end up with these lovely results. Essentially, it's only 4 lines of sewing, guys, but it's just been super duper accurate, and you can do it. I'm with you. I'm behind you. Now, if you want to, you can tack this tape to the seam allowance. It's up to you whether you do that. It might be more if you're wearing it and it starts to annoy you. You can tack that down out of the way. The reason we have that long is so that the zipper can be out of our way when we're stitching. And if you don't have a good, 3 to 4 centimetres, you will really struggle to get that lovely detail at the end, so hopefully that helps. So you'll be pleased to know we're back onto straight stitching. So you're going to take the back of your trousers, and you're going to lay it with the right sides facing up, and you're going to lay on top the right sides of your trousers, which I will go and grab to show you. So here I've got the back of the trousers with the right sides facing up, and the front of the trousers with the right sides facing down. So the fabric is right sides together, and we've pinned all the way down each of the legs, matching the notches as we go. And then we're going to stitch down each side, and we're going to press the seams open and finish them if we are finishing our seams in our chosen method. I shall meet you back when you've done that, because you don't need to see me stitching. We're going to use our normal 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, guys, so I'm sure you'll be okay with that. See you shortly. So you guys should have all of your side seams pressed open and finished with the finish of your choice, if any. And we're going to then work on the inside leg seam. So we're going to match at the crotch, so we're going to open up those seams and match them beautifully, and then we're going to go down each leg, pinning as we go. Gosh, that was harder than it should have been, sorry. So we're going to pop a pin so that the crotches match, and then we're going to work by pinning all the way down one leg and all the way down the other, and then you're going to stitch it in one. So you're going to go from one leg to the crotch and then back down the other leg, and then you're going to finish your seams and press them open. So what you'll have then is a pair of trousers that you can try on if you so wish. Just be aware that they're high-waisted. So they're going to sit likely just underneath your rib cage, because that's where your natural waist is, and that's the most flattering location for the waistband to be. In order to keep it there, they are fitted to your waist size. So any slight difference in that, they're either going to be a little bit too tight or they're going to drop down and be unflattering. So this is your opportunity to make them fit properly. So if you feel that they're a little bit tight, remembering that they have to fit properly, then you can use your side seams by making a slightly bigger seam allowance. You can reduce that waist size, or if you need to take them out a little bit, you can reduce the size of that seam down each side. If you size mead your project, you should fit into them beautifully. But there is a disclaimer attached to that. You must have cut them out properly, you must have stitched them with accuracy, and you must be using the correct type of fabric. So really focus on your detail, guys, as you're doing these trousers. When they fit, they are absolutely beautiful. I feel very dramatic when I wear mine, I'll be honest, I love them. So yes, this is your opportunity, once you've done this inside seam, to check the fit. And then all we've got left to do is to pop on the waistband and hem them. So we're not far from finishing. I will leave you to pin, stitch and press your centre seam, and I'll return when we're all ready, and I'd like you to have your waistbands along with the two interfacings together at the ironing board. See you in a bit, guys. We finally got to the waistband, guys. So if you want to take your pattern piece off of the paper, now I have already marked which are the right and wrong. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the right side of this waistband face down onto the ironing board. You've got two of them. Just going to show you with one, like so. Now fabric can move out of shape, and that's why we're going to add interfacing to stop it stretching at the waistband. So interfacing doesn't move because that's what it's supposed to do, that's what it's designed not to move. So if you find when you place these down that they don't work, so they're a different shape, it's the fabric that you move to the shape of the interfacing, not the other way around, okay? So if you haven't used interfacing before, you may not know, but one side is shiny, can you see? And the other side isn't. So the shiny side is heat activated glue. So we're going to put the heat activated glue down facing the fabric, and then we're going to use the iron. I've turned the steam off of the iron because the steam will ripple the interfacing, it's like paper. So steam off, we're going to start in the middle, and it's a real stamp motion. I'm not ironing, I'm pressing. Okay, I'm going to work my way down to this end. Just leave it on there for a little while, it should start to stick, and then we're going to go back this way. Once it's stuck, you can then just go over it with the ironing motion, but just make sure it sticks first, and then you should have one interfaced waistband. I'm going to do the other one just to repeat the process. So that's my right sides with the cross. I'm going to make them face the ironing board, so we're right sides facing down. Use this one. I'll be looking for that later. Then I'm going to take the interfacing shiny side facing the fabric. And if anything needs to move, it's the fabric, not the interfacing, remember. It's easier on a straight waistband. Imagine if it was curved though. That's when you need to think about that. And then we're going to start in the middle. And we're going to stamp or press. This is, I suppose, the true definition of pressing, is that you press the fabric down. And we do that before we finish it off with just a gentle, regular ironing motion. Okay. If you take these along with your trousers to your sewing machine, I will go through the next step. Okay guys, so what I've done is I've taken the waistband and I've got the right sides facing the right side of the trousers. I've gone to one edge that has the zip, helps if I show you. Excuse all those strays. So this is one edge with the zip, and I've measured 1.5 centimetres overlap. and I've pinned it. I've then come all the way to the other zip, or rather the other side of the same zip, and I have measured 6.5 centimetres and I've put a pin in it. What that means is I now know everything in the middle has to fit. If it doesn't fit, something is wrong with either the dart construction, the seams, or the pleats. Okay, so go back and check them. Now you may have to stretch it a little, which is quite normal, but I mean a little, not a lot. Once you've got it in the right position, you're going to pin it all in place, all the way around, and then we're going to stitch it at a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. Now, some people get to this point and they say, oh, you've got 10 centimetres extra. If you have, something's wrong. So you really need to go back and have a look. That is unless they fit when you tried them on earlier, although 10 centimetres to lose is quite a lot when it comes to fit. But if you think it's easy to find that 10 centimetres, let's say you made a 0.5 centimetre error on the two side seams. So that's 1 centimetre, 2 centimetres. You also did the same in the front and back crotch, so that's 4 centimetres. Let's say your pleats were out by 0.5 centimetre, so there's 2 of them, so we're at 6 centimetres already. So small increments really create a problem. So I'd like you to spend some time checking the accuracy if this waistband doesn't fit, because the design says it should do. Okay, so I'm going to stitch around there. I will bring it around so that you can see. The machine is set at our regular stitch and a 2.5 stitch length. I'm just checking I've got nothing caught underneath before we start. I've got a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance here, so that's where I'm matching up. So I'm going to start one side, do a back stitch as we always would, and then we're just simply going to stitch all the way around. I just want you to check, so for example we're coming up to one of the darts. I just want you to check that they are pinned in the right direction. Sometimes if you don't check that, you can get a real bunch in the fabric, especially sort of when you look at the side seams. So it's nice and steady, stitch all the way around, paying attention to that seam allowance. Notice I keep moving this fabric at this side, because it does get in your way, guys, so don't be afraid to just pause your stitching and check that everything underneath is okay before you go ahead. Something there, can you see how that's pleated? I knew that was pleated because something didn't feel right here, so you really do need to keep checking. It's another reason why I say if you're going fast, you're going wrong, because if you're going fast, you can't check on these little details. Another pocket in there, so we just want to make sure it's all nice and I'm going to leave you to do that. I'm going to continue this until I'm right round where I started, and then I will meet you, and I would like you to have with you your other waistband and some pins. See you in a bit. I'm not at the ironing board. I was so eager to get going, I forgot a step. So this is my other waistband, the one we haven't already stitched. And can you see I've just finished one end. Now, you can finish that however you like, but I would recommend that you do finish that section because that's going to be on show inside. But it's also going to be the bit that's up against your body, so pulling on and off, it's going to fray over time. So do finish that however you choose to do that. And then the other thing I wanted to just chat with you about, so we're on step number 16 here. So we've stitched, and what we're going to do now is we're going to trim the seam allowance by half, and I just wanted to show you what that looks like. So here's our seam allowance, the one that's above that stitch line. I don't want you to cut these bits on the end, So I want you to start almost where the zip is. Like that. Does that make sense? Let's get rid of that. Yeah. And then you're just going to cut all the way around. Be very careful that it doesn't catch anything but the waistband. This is a real stressful bit where if you're not careful, you could easily go through the front of your trousers, the back of the trousers. So just take your time with that. There's quite a bit of bulk in this seam if you try and get through where the pockets and the pleats are all together. So we're just cutting half of it away. Now the next step is that you're going to press this seam. So it's the seam allowance that you're pressing. So we're going to be pressing this seam allowance all the way upwards towards that interfacing. Okay, so that's your next step. You're going to press it upwards and then you're going to turn it and you're going to press it on this side as well because it will make it look beautiful. Once you've done that, I will meet you back here and we're going to attach the other side of the waistband and get it completed. So you should see, by doing the pressing, this is all lovely and crisp. So all of that seam is pressed upwards. We're going to take the waistband that we finished the edge on now, and we're going to put it with the right sides facing the waistband that's already attached, like this. So I'm just going to pin it in place and then I'll explain to you what we're doing. So the edge that you have already finished is going to be facing down, like so. So it's this top edge that we're matching. So I've matched the sides and now I'm matching across the top, and I'm going to go all the way till I get to the other side. Hopefully you are enjoying this project. It's a long project. It looks really simple because you've got a few pieces of fabric, but there's a couple of details in there that you really do have to think about, and hopefully this tutorial has given you the confidence to crack on and do them. I have to tell you, this has been quite a traumatic tutorial for me. So my laptop that I do the recording on at the minute has been playing up. So it crashed when I was just about to do the side seams. So we'd done everything. And I really panicked thinking I was going to lose all of the recordings and have to start all over again. Now, fingers crossed I haven't. They were there, or most of them were there, so hopefully it's all good. But then I got a dimension wrong, I think, which I might have to dub when I go backwards to edit everything. So yeah, it's been quite a traumatic recording. Hopefully you've not even noticed. Hopefully you just think I'm ever the seasoned professional and there's not been any problems. I doubt that that's the case. Okay, so we've pinned that right to the other end and it should match perfectly, which it does. And what we're then going to do on the ends, this is what the instructions are trying to explain. We're going to push this seam allowance back that way. Okay, I'm going to put a pin so that I can explain to you what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch right from where the zip is on up here and then all along the top. So it's important, I'll show you what it looks like at the back. So it's important that we can get, I just push that back down, we start basically where that row of stitching left off. Does that make sense? So you can just about see that brown row of stitching. So we're going to start at this end of it and come, this end of it and come this way up and all the way on. I'm going to go all the way around then until we get to the other side. We're going to do something very similar but we don't have that overhang on this side, so as you can see, we currently look like that. So we're going to bring this seam down so that it matches. Again, I'll put a pin and then you can see what I'm doing. So can you see where that stitch finished? That's the stitch that finished the waistband attaching. We're then going to go from here upwards. It just means that the detail where the zip matches the waistband looks really, really clear and really lovely. So that's what we're going to be doing. I will bring you round so that you can have a watch. So we're going to start on the bit with the overhang. So I've started precisely where the other stitching that came across here stopped. So I'm sort of in line with this zip. So I'm going to do my back stitch as always, and then we're off. Sorry, my pins are the wrong way around. I tell you, it's been traumatic today. And we're going to turn. It's important that we turn at the correct seam allowance, okay? So when I turn, I want to be on the 1.5, which I am. Now, it's probably easier for you guys if you set it up in the other direction, because you won't have to contend with all the trousers. But I've just flipped onto this side. I just wanted to show you that detail first, that's why. So we're all going to do the same thing, and we're going to keep it that 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, and we're simply going to stitch across the top all the way to the other side. Now I'm going to stitch, but I will let you join back when I'm doing the other side. So I've come all the way around, and I'm at the other zip now. So I've come to a point at this, and this direction, sorry, and I've put my needle in so that I can lift the foot up and turn so that I'm coming down this direction. And my aim, once I get everything out of the way, is to come down here, to finish alongside that zip. So that's what we're aiming for. See how we're just coming down the edge of that zip, and then your back stitch, guys, as normal. What you want to avoid is touching that zip, because if you hit that zip, it will cause no end of trouble. So let me show you our next step. We're just going to snip that corner and trim up there, which allows us to turn our waistband around in the other direction. Okay, now we're going to go and give it a press and turn it out beautifully. But what's important is when you first turn it, sometimes the zip is still down here, the tab, but you need to tuck that under, which gives you that little detail here. Can you see that? The other side we're going to do exactly the same. There's a little bit more trimming though. If I find it, I can show you. So in this one, we have to trim both corners. Under there. And then we can turn that in the same manner. I'll turn that around and I'll see you at the ironing board, guys. So we've turned out the long edge, the overlap that we needed. And now what we're going to do is we're going to work all the way around that waistband. So the first thing that we're going to do is wet our fingers so that we can, I want to press it right on that seam. Don't want anything rolling over to the front, and we're going to use steam because steam's our friend. So we're just going to give that a lovely press so it's nice and crisp. Notice that this detail, so it kind of goes from under and comes out, that detail is absolutely fine. That's what it's intended to be like. Some people may not like the look of it, and that's fine. There are other ways that you can put a waistband on, but hopefully you've realised by now what I try to do is to give you the easiest option. or the one that gives you the most success. But yeah, that detail is quite okay. So I'm just pressing that top edge so that it looks beautiful on this side. When I've pressed it and I'm happy, I'm just going to pin it. And I'm going to pin it like that. And I'm just going to put pins all the way around as I'm going along. Because what we're doing is pinning this waistband down, ready for when we're going to be stitching in the ditch, which is our next step. So I'm rolling that waistband. I want it right on that crease. I don't want anything peeking over. It just looks unsightly if there's anything peeking over. So this is your chance. Notice I'm doing a couple of inches at a time. I'm not trying to do it quickly. I'm trying to do it properly. So there's no point in rushing. Just a couple of inches at a time. Yes, it might take a little longer, but you won't have to do it twice. Okay, so I'm now working on this bit. So I'm just going to roll it to the position that I want it to be. And I'm literally working on that section there. And then I'm going to press it in place. Once I'm happy that it's pressed in place, I'm just going to pop my pin in. So we're going to work our way round, doing exactly that, making sure everything matches. We're not being tempted to pull the waistband to the left or the right. We're literally doing it straight over. If you pull it to the left or the right when you fold it, generally what you'll find is you've got too much at this point or too little, whichever way you've done it. When you're all pinned and all beautiful like this, I'm going to meet you back at the sewing machine and we'll do the next technique, which is stitching in the ditch. Okay?
Right then, guys. Stitching in the ditch is stitching right inside that seam, so that in theory you get an invisible stitch all the way around. But what it's doing for us is it's catching this side of the waistband in place and creating less bulk up here in the waistband. So I did purposefully pin the pins on the other side because it's easier, but we're going to take them out as we go. I've checked that my needle, when I put it down, is precisely in the middle. And then we're just going to go nice and steady. I'm pulling those two pieces of fabric apart as I stitch. You can get a foot that helps to guide this. I haven't used mine because I wasn't sure if everybody would have one. But if you're going to do this a lot, it's probably worth the few pounds investment. You're going to go nice and steady, as accurate as you can. Now, I'm going to concentrate and go all the way around. I'd like you guys to do the same. Don't stress out too much. If you can see some of it, I'm going to show you. If you've got a matching thread, it won't matter too much, okay? So just be kind to yourself, give yourself a break, and nice and steady all the way around.
Right then, guys. So this is what your trousers should look like at the front, and then that's a little insight as to what they're going to look like on the inside. Okay, so your waistband should be all caught and all beautiful. Now, we got to put a hook and bar on this back section here. So, first thing we're going to do is put the hook. I always forget which way around they go, but I think the hook should go on the overlap. That's how I've always done it. So we're going to put the hook, turn this round, close to the end of the overhang. Okay, probably somewhere about there. Now notice the hook is what direction it's facing, because it's got to hook onto the trousers that way, so pay attention to that. Now there is no other way but to hand stitch this on, guys. So bear with me. Now, people stress out about hand sewing because they think it has to look immaculate and beautiful. It's not always the case. We're hand sewing this because it needs to be hand sewn. It's a functional thing. Okay, now I'm going to bring you around so that you can see what I'm up to. Hopefully you can see. So I've got 2 holes there, so I'm going to start in that location. I'm going to go in and out. I've only got 1 thickness of thread. So in order to knot it, I'm going to do 3 little stitches in exactly the same spot. I'm not going all the way through to the front. Sorry, I keep moving. I'm just going through that 1 bit. And then I'm just going to keep going until that hole is secure. And then I'm going to move on to the next one. So I'm going to bring it closer to me so that I can see, and then I'll show you the end result. So we're just going in and round all the time. I mean, some people love the hand sewing process. It's not my favourite thing, but it is a necessary thing. There are certain things that you can't do on a machine. You could zigzag through the hole, but I think that's just a bit dangerous at times. But also you'll see the stitching on the other side of the, on the right side of the trousers, and I don't particularly like that as a detail. So I'd quite happily just sit and do this little bit of hand sewing. So I've gone round a few times into those holes so they're secure, and then I'm not going to start again, I'm just going to go straight to the other one. So I've just gone straight across, so from here to here, and then I'm going to do a few in that one. I always find that hand sewing is just a nice moment to relax and chill out. Now we only have the final step after this, guys, and that's hemming the trousers, which is not a very difficult thing to do if you do it properly, if you do it correctly. Now the trousers have a 5 centimetre seam allowance. I've done a few around that, and I'm going to jump across to those 2. So we got a 5 centimetre seam allowance on these trousers, and if you use that 5 centimetres, the trousers, they just skim the floor really. They're almost bang on floor length. If you want them to be different, because they're straight-legged trousers, that's fine. You can take them up or take them down any way in which you choose. But that's the allowance that has been allowed. So it's a 5 centimetres. The first thing we're going to do is to press that 5 centimetres. And we're going to use something called a sleeve board. Hopefully you have seen one before. If you haven't, you're going to see one shortly. I've got to the end and I've just done 3 little stitches in exactly the same spot. And now I'm going to move on to the bar. The location of the bar matters, guys. So we're going to pull the zip up to the top and overlap where we've just put the hook, like so. And you should then be able to go in and just judge where the best location for that bar is. And I think it's about there. Once you've got it in the location, you've got 4 little holes again. I'm just going to do the first one and then I can show you up close, she says, and then she unthreads the needle. Not having much luck with this one, sorry guys. If you were able to feedback on this video, that would be really helpful. If you leave anything in the comments, if you feel I've missed a big section out or something wasn't clear, because I can always add and edit to these videos. So please, any comments are gratefully received, so long as they're constructive. That's fab. I think a lot of people might be watching them who aren't actually making the garments, and if that's the case, you're always welcome. But I would challenge you to try one of the garments one time. I think you'd enjoy them.
So I've just gone through those loops, finished it off with a few stitches in the same location, and I'm going to just go on to the top here. Yeah, if you are going to critique, don't critique my hand sewing, guys. Be kind. Be kind to each other. My aim for these tutorials, or rather for these patterns, was to give you a mini sewing lesson with each one so that you could build up your skills and knowledge as you went through. I'd like to know whether you feel that. I'd like each of them to be a little sewing class, hopefully. That is the case. I guess more than anything, I want to see your end results. I love seeing what people have made, whether it's my pattern or not, but certainly when it's my pattern, I'd love to see your fabric choices and all those wonderful things. Just finishing this one off, guys. So that is the hook and bar that will just hook on the top like so when we're wearing them. The last thing then is the hems. So if you bear with me for a moment, I shall meet you back at the ironing board. So the trousers are inside out, and this is one of the hems. They're quite wide legs, there's quite a lot of hem to do. This little contraption is a sleeve board. It's like a little mini ironing board, but it really helps for these types of things. So I've just popped the trouser leg on here, and we're going to start by turning over that 5 centimetres that we were talking about earlier. So the hem allowance on these trousers are 5 centimetres. If you do a lovely deep hem on a pair of anything, it actually gives it the impression that it's more expensive than maybe what they are. I think it's psychological more than anything, but trust me, it does work. So a nice deep hem does make a difference to your project. So this one, we're going to press over 5 centimetres, and then we're going to go back round and we're going to tuck 2 of those centimetres back under, which leaves us with a 3 centimetre hem. So I am constantly checking this measurement, guys, and I hope that you will be too. We're putting absolute faith here in our stitching ability and also in our cutting ability from when we cut the pattern out originally from the paper and then originally from the fabric. We're putting absolute faith in those things so that we know that your trousers are going to be hemmed level. Now, some people try them on, take them off, try them on. That's fine, that works, but isn't it easier to trust in what you've done? And in order to trust in what you've done, you need to have done it properly. So if that's not an incentive to take your time when you're doing these things, I honestly don't know what is. So we're coming around now to the other side. There we go. So then we're going to tuck the 2 centimetres under, which will give us a 3 centimetre hem. So that was nowhere near. There we go. This time we're going to press it so that it's in place, and then we're going to pop a pin in. Just help if I have the pins handy. And we're going to put the pin close to the edge that we pressed, so close to this edge here. We're going to do that all the way around on both of our legs, and then I'll meet you back at the ironing board. No, I won't. I'll meet you back at the sewing machine. The final step then. We're going to stitch close to this edge all the way around on your hem. I have a stitch length of 3.5, so one whole number bigger, because we're going to see this stitch on the other side. If it's easier than guessing, I want you to line up the edge of your hem at 2.5 centimetres. Okay. I don't do a back stitch to begin. I do a back stitch at the end when I'm hemming. It just makes it less messy because you're going to come round to the same location anyway. Now, these trousers, there's a fair bit of fabric in them, so I want to see you constantly rearranging the trousers so that it's easier to hem. And we're just going to stitch. I'm keeping this line steady, and we're going to stitch all the way around. Now, you've got 2 of these to do, as have I. When you've done that, before we have our big ta-da moment at the end, I'm going to get rid of all the loose threads that are around on this project, and I'm going to give them a good press. Yep. And then I shall see you again for our big ta-da moment. Alright guys, happy hemming, see you soon.
Okay then, are we ready? 1, 2, 3, ta-da! So, here's my Florence trousers, which I have to say are super cute. Hopefully you've just had a great ta-da moment of your own. I would love to see what you've done, guys. It's part of why I love what I do, to see all you guys achieve. So if you could share on the social media, send me a private message if you don't want it plastered to the world, but I would absolutely love to see your makes. I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did, despite all of the gremlins that seemed to be after me today. We finally got to the end. Phew. Okay, hopefully you really enjoyed doing your Size Me project, and I'll see you on another one. All right then guys, see you soon. Bye.